excited to be hearing from you. Cheu is the founder of MedTours Africa. And so we want to learn in this next session about her entrepreneurial journey. Hi, Cheu, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me. And no pressure speaking after the founder of grand scale motivation, my speaking coach, no pressure. I do not feel any pressure. Just want to put it out there.
Oh my goodness. You're a founder as well. And just before you begin, I would love to introduce you properly to everyone who's joined us here today. So Cheu Pswarayi, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, has 10 years experience as an entrepreneur in the healthcare sector. She's the founder and chief executive officer of MedTours Africa, an organization that facilitates access of healthcare treatment for patients who cannot find it in their home countries. And she manages the running of CJ Medical Supplies, a company that provides medical supplies at affordable prices to private and public medical institutions in Zimbabwe. She's also a co-founder and trustee of Health Horizons Trust. Her roles at the organizations is, she leads and enables her to passionately pursue her vision of healthcare access for all. She's a Rotarian, current president of her club, and involves herself in different service opportunities in her community. She's a Mandela Washington Fellow for Young African Leaders, a law student, speaker, and business coach. Wow, we're in the presence. We're so honored to have you, and we'll look forward to the next hour with you. The floor is definitely yours.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's good to be here. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to be able to share my journey. And in sharing the journey, hopefully someone is going to get something to take from it, and to also inspire them to start their own journey, to start sharing their own story. There's a lot of vulnerability involved in sharing, and I think Uno talked about the fear of rejection, which sometimes could stop someone from getting out there and putting their story out. So I'm happy that I'm at this stage where I can confidently share what I've been through and what the intentions I have with my company, MedTours Africa. I'll concentrate on MedTours Africa today. Funny enough, I can't, I'll put a disclaimer. I'm unable to multitask. So I'm going to have to ask you to keep checking the comments tab, so that if you want to stop me, just wave, because I won't be looking at anything else. I'll just be speaking. And then if I'm going overboard, just wave again, because I love speaking. But I will be looking at the time. So, 5 years ago, about 5 years ago, I did a big launch of MedTours Africa, the company. So we booked the hotel at the Rainbow Towers here in Zimbabwe. I'm from Harare, and had people come through. And I remember sitting down 2 weeks before that event and writing down my speech. And it's interesting that Uno was talking about writing things down. So when I was asked to talk about how I started, I just got my speech out. And most of what I'm going to share with you is actually me reading from the speech I made 5 years ago. And it's actually still relevant. And it might actually constitute the first chapter of my book, right? So MedTours Africa was actually born out of a personal tragedy. Well, what we do, before I start on why, what MedTours Africa is we assist anyone who needs to travel abroad for medical treatment. So someone could opt to leave their country to seek medical treatment, either because the treatment is not available in their home country, or sometimes the local options are too expensive, or sometimes, it's personal choice. I want to travel just because I can travel, and I want to go get my teeth done or tummy tuck. But usually the patients we assist are actually traveling for life-saving surgeries, the brain tumors, cardiac conditions, kidney transplants. Those are the people who assist. So I started it out of a personal tragedy. An aunt of mine, my mom's sister, passed away early 2013 from a heart condition. So when she started ailing, her plans and her intentions were to travel to India for treatment. That's what the doctor had said. And the responsibility to make that happen fell on her husband, my uncle, to facilitate for the treatment abroad. But between running around to make sure that she was okay, taking care of the family, keeping things afloat, dealing with my aunt's ins and out of local hospitals, trying to get the traveling documents in order, securing a hospital in India on time, taking care of all the red tape and bureaucracy of traveling, my aunt never made it to India. So, she was eventually hospitalized locally, and despite what the health practitioners did locally, she passed away. My uncle, try as he might, he was unable to make that trip happen. The realities of being on the ground, being pulled in a million different directions, taking care of an ailing wife, keeping the family together, and just the obvious turmoil of an illness of a loved one. It was just a lot for him to handle. And it's a lot for anyone to have to handle, really. So my aunt's death was devastating. And knowing that she could possibly have had a chance of survival if she had traveled on time was a difficult pill to swallow. It still is. And, the constant what ifs our family has had to deal with have been heartbreaking. So it was a difficult time for all of us, but out of pain, out of experience, sometimes comes enlightenment and unforeseen clarity. And that's exactly what happened with me. Watching my uncle's plight, and as my aunt was ailing, being close to his predicament upon her death led me to introspection in a direction I'd never thought to take before. It made me explore the realities of international travel for treatment. And it brought to me the realization that, contrary to what many of us believe, the biggest challenge, in my opinion, with seeking medical travel abroad for a loved one sometimes isn't always financial constraints. In some instances, it's actually the facilitation, the logistics of it, the travel process that require your undivided effort and energy and time. Those things that you as a caregiver, in all likelihood, do not have to spare. Facilitating is actually a full-time job. It requires a lot from an individual, more than you can honestly give when the person who needs that medical assistance is someone close to you. How do you really realistically balance being a caregiver and the emotional strains that come with that, while simultaneously handling all the logistics and requirements of travel? And sometimes it's travel for individuals who've never been on a plane before, travel to a country you've never even been to before and never even considered traveling to. So how could my uncle have possibly coped in that situation? And how many more people in Zimbabwe, in SADC, were in similar situations to that, desperately in need of treatment for their loved ones, but burdened with the impossible responsibility of having to single-handedly arrange all that, what could be done to help and what could ease the burden, so those are the questions which brought me to MedTours Africa, to the birth of a company that promised then 5 years ago, and that promises still to ease that burden of international medical travel, and is hell-bent on making sure we deliver on that promise. Medical tourism wasn't a field that I was highly familiar with before. But my aunt's death and unfortunate circumstances surrounding it spurred me on to research medical tourism with a vigor that only a personal attachment could conjure up. I wanted to know what I could do to bring a solution, however small it might be, to the hundreds of people in my uncle's shoes. Surely something could be done, and I wanted to play my part in doing it. So my research introduced me to a field of medical tourism. It brought me inside the world of one of the fastest growing industries in the world back then. It's a different thing now after COVID. But we'll get to that. So the medical tourism industry, is the direct globalization of healthcare expanding. And, in 2013, when I was doing my research, it was anticipated to have a growth of 17.9%, and to reach an estimated value of $32.5 billion, worldwide. So this is the value of medical tourism, an industry I didn't even know existed before, but those were not the figures of a fickle industry. Those numbers showed me an industry that would be going from strength to strength, and that was definitely here to stay. I'm a business person. I was operating my company, CJV Medical Supplies. I'd started it 5 years before that. So it's 10 years old now. So the entrepreneurial part of me said, okay, opportunity is there, impact definitely is there, the need is there. So, the realization, together with the information acquired, then led me to zone in to India, because I wanted to fully explore the feasibility of the industry, and India just popped up as one of the main tourist destinations for medical tourism. And I was not disappointed with my research. I actually had to go. I went on a trip to India just to see, and this was before I even launched the company, just to see, just to have a feel of it, because I didn't want to have to recommend and send people somewhere I hadn't been before. The research had shown that sometimes things can go wrong in medical tourism. There are stories online where people would have been promised certain things, certain facilities, certain expertise, and they would have paid and then traveled and got there and not gotten what they've been promised. So I wanted to make sure, because these are people who are vulnerable and going through a significant stage of their lives, So I wanted to be that voice to say, you know what, I'm referring you to X hospital. I have been there. I have met them. I've probably seen one of the rooms, which is similar to where you are going to be. I've had the food, and you need to pack your tinned food. But, I wanted to be able to be in a position where I can best advise them, and where I can do my due diligence on the entities I would be sending patients to. So yeah, packed my bag, flew to India, and it was, I love India. I think I'm half Indian now. And I managed on that first trip. I was introducing myself as Cheu Pswarayi, who wants to start a company. So you're talking to big institutions, and what India has done is they've managed to make healthcare a business. They've to commercialize it. So there is the treatment aspect, and they're very good at it. The medical personnel there, the doctors, are very good at it. And then there's the administrative side, the marketing side, the business side of it. And those were the people I was going there to face and to say, do you want to be in my portfolio? I'm going to start up a company. It's called MedTours Africa. No, I haven't registered it yet. But yes, this is what we're going to offer. And because I wanted the best, I was talking to the best of the hospitals. And some of them straight up said, talk to us when you started. But I managed to get from that initial trip, the one hospital partner whom I started with, who said, okay, sure, we believe in you. We like your courage. And are you here on your own? That was the other thing. Miss Cheu, they call me Miss Cheu when I'm in India. Miss Cheu, are you here on your own? Yes, I'm here by myself. There's no man with you. No, I don't need a guy next to me. But that also made me face some, there was discrimination. There was definitely discrimination. I was relatively younger than I am now. We can debate on whether I'm still young or not, but I was younger then, and I was the Black woman on my own pitching a business for a company which hadn't been registered. Many question marks there. But I did engage one good hospital. They had the accreditations I was looking for, because I had a standard which I didn't want to compromise on, and it was international accreditation. So they were internationally accredited and nationally accredited, and they believed in what I wanted and in my story, and signed on. So I remember they also came through for the big launch we had, and they sponsored that, and it really went well. And we opened our doors, and the aim as MedTours Africa was and is to provide medical tourists in the sub-Saharan African region a one-stop shop for all their medical travel services and logistics. The goal to lessen the burden on caregivers by giving them the much-needed assistance of taking care of all medical travel logistics for their loved ones, thereby giving them the time and space to be with them without worrying about the technicalities of getting from point A to point B. The mission: to facilitate for safe, comfortable, reasonably priced medical tourism packages for our clients by offering packages that are suitable for different income levels, but that do not compromise on the quality of care that they seek. And our business philosophy: to go above and beyond the average level of service to create an emotional impact to the receiver. And our edge: a business that operates mainly online, giving us superior accessibility and affording us financial flexibility by cutting down on overhead costs to offer services that are affordable. So you remember this is a snippet of the speech which was then, when we launched, and I read it out. Some of the goals and aspirations, especially our online accessibility, we haven't matched where the intention when we started up was set for. But I mention it again because it's still the intention to build up to that. And that's, I'll jump to the lessons now. And that's one of the lessons which I have got from starting a business, having a startup from scratch until, 5 years later. You set goals for yourself, and you set standards, and you share them with the stakeholders. It makes you accountable. Sometimes you won't get those goals in the first 3 months. Like if I was to show you our financial projections, which we had then when we were starting out, and the actual of what we have, it's not near what we would have seen, what we saw before starting operating. And this is, I think, usually what happens, because no one starts a business planning on failure, planning on losses. But when you look at the statistics of startups, you'll see that X, I don't have the figures, the stats off here. Someone can just pop them into the chat. I'm sure someone knows, that X percentage fail in the first year, X percentage will get up to 5 years, and even a fewer percentage gets to 10 years. But when you're starting, you're not predicting that in 10 years' time, you're not going to be existing. You want to succeed, but the unexpected always happens. I think the most surest thing about business is something you haven't planned for is going to happen. And that's a fact. Something unplanned is going to happen. So we had 4 objectives then. Number 1, to tailor make. So I'll talk about the objectives then and just get a little bit into what we have done and where we are at now. So to tailor-make medical tourism packages for our clients in a short space of time with the best deals on pricing. What we've found is usually we can't offer different pricing in terms of the actual treatment cost. But what we are flexible with is the accommodation pre and post hospitalization, the flights, so those can be tailor-made because we will have the whole different income levels who needs the service. So we have had patients who want to travel first class and go into the 5-star hotels pre and post hospitalization, and we had one actually who wanted to also sightsee and actually incorporate a tourism aspect after the procedure had been done. But we also have those who are not able to afford the first class treatments, those who would rather have shared accommodation, self-catering when they go and they've been discharged, they need to stay up in the country. So on those extras, that's where we've been really able to tailor make the packages. What we've also been able to do, because of the numbers we send to our partner hospitals, is to at times negotiate for the actual treatment cost depending on the person's background, because we've now built a relationship with these hospitals and service providers, and they know us and they know that we are also a source of business for them. Remember, they are in the business of healthcare, so we are also a source of patients for them, and they make their money from that. When once in a while we say, this is an exceptional case, this is the background, this family has managed to raise X amount, they do listen to us. And on occasion, we've actually also managed to negotiate payment plans. So it's really dependent on the individual's background and their income and the story they have. So what I always tell people is, you need to convince me first. You can't assume that you go to a hospital and start negotiating at the same level that I can. And I say this with confidence because Uno speaks about you need to be aware of the value you bring to people. And sometimes I'll go silent on it, but what's the point? If you come through MedTours Africa, we're able to amplify your plea because we have been giving business to these people for a while now. You are in this situation. It's probably the first time you're going to go there, and touch wood, you won't need to go there for any other person. So use us and leverage on our experience so that you get the best bargain, the best deal. Objective number 2, to lessen the burden on caregivers by giving them support, assistance, and constant feedback on all travel and treatment logistics. And we've done this very well. We always have a customer feedback form where we ask patients to review our service. And 99% of the time, we score 90% plus. We've actually had a few, and we have the evidence. We have, because it's written and we file. We have forms where we've been scored 105% by patients or their caregivers because they're happy with the way we constantly communicate, the way we take over, mundane tasks like visa application forms. When you're not used to the forms, they're really straightforward. But if you're doing it for the first time, it can seem cumbersome. Sometimes it times out. It's really frustrating when you're doing it for the first time. It will time out and then it's got 5 pages and then you have to start again. And then sometimes it won't take your payment method. So all those little things which just really compound on frustrations of someone who's taking care of someone who's not well is what we've been able to help with. And we've had positive feedback. When a patient travels, we create a WhatsApp group because usually people who travel are just the patient and someone else and their accompanying person. but they've left behind next of other really close relatives who want to know what's what and what's going on. And you know, when you're the one who's traveled with the patient, it can get overwhelming. You are in a new country. The people don't speak your language. You're different weather, different food. It's really, I think this is the second time I'm mentioning it, because it's a different diet, and then you're checking up on the patient. You're actually admitted with the patient whilst they're inside. So you're staying 100% in the hospital with the person you've gone with. You want someone else to be fielding those questions from relatives, because relatives can be demanding. And it's not out of malice. It's just because they want to know what's going on. Especially, are there any diaspora people on the call? Hey, the diaspora people want to know things more than others. So the WhatsApp group we create actually helps us to take the pressure off the person who's traveled with the patient, because we daily updates of what's going on. We also field questions and any updates. If it's a medical aid ward, the ones funding the medical bill, we'll also put them in, and they also want to know what's going on, especially on the financial side. Are the bills are they exceeding what had been quoted before? If they are, why, and how can we manage it? So is that this personalized taking care of the updates, which I can 100% say our objective number 2 has been met and is being met. The third objective was to create partnerships with the best of medical practitioners, airlines, accommodation specialists. And that's what we've done. We haven't slackened in the requirements we request from hospitals for them to be a hospital partner in our portfolio. We have maintained standard. And I think because of COVID-19, there are only 2 hospitals out of our portfolio of 15 whom we're using right now, where I or a member of my team hasn't personally visited, just to do that due diligence. Now, I don't have a medical background whatsoever. So when I'm actually going on site, I am trying to experience it from how a patient would experience it. I am asking for water from the general hand in a hospital so that I know how quick they will give me that water. I am going into the bathrooms so that I see if they're clean. And I'm just conversing with the staff, I'm talking to the doctors, and I assess the hospitals from a layperson's point of view. We trust that the accreditations that we ask for, a third party who are more knowledgeable in that industry, have done their work in making sure that the medical outcomes check, the confidentiality which the hospitals need to abide by, check, the lab services, check. So all the other medical aspects, technical aspects are catered for by the accreditation process, because the accreditation we ask for is very thorough. It's difficult to get. I think in India it's less than 20 hospitals who have that JCI. It's called JCI accreditation. And then objective number 4, to maintain professionalism at all times and avoid liabilities. So this was really huge because on researching about the industry, there was, there's that potential of being sued and being liable. Sometimes losses of lives happen. And I laugh a bit because the first patient, when we started in 2015, the first patient we facilitated for passed away. They traveled and they passed away whilst they were there. So there weren't any liability issues, but it was just, it was a difficult way to get in the business. And then, but that also was a good learning experience for us, because we then had to facilitate for repatriation. And it was a success in that we managed, and this was someone who had traveled to India. We managed to get her repatriated in 5 days. And that's a big feat. If there's anyone in Zimbabwe who's lost a loved one, whether they were in South Africa or in the UK, you'll know that sometimes it takes an average of 2 to 3 weeks to get someone to be repatriated from South Africa. And South Africa is just an hour and a half flight, 18 hours by road. But we managed to get that lady back home for burial within 5 days. And it really spoke to how we had actually planned. I think of it now, I guess we were more organized than I give myself credit for. But we were organized. We had good communication with the embassy in the Zimbabwean embassy in India, and everyone else, all the stakeholders, the ministry. It's a lot of paperwork which needs to be done, and it's a lot of running around. It's a lot of coordination. Again, if you don't have a facilitator doing it for you, if you've just gone there because you've picked a hospital online, and the two of you have managed to go, it becomes a very difficult burden for that person who was traveling with the patient, because they are the ones in country and they have to coordinate everything. And remember, there's pressure from relatives. And remember, you're now mourning the death of the person you'd gone with, and you're on your own and you're in a foreign country. So, the need for a facilitator, sometimes people don't see it before on planning. But when you really think of what could go wrong, and you want to avoid it, and sometimes it's not just the death, sometimes it's just bills which can escalate. And we've had an incident where unfortunately the diagnostics hadn't picked some other complication of her condition up when they were in Zim. So we had sent the medical reports, and a treatment cost estimate had been sent through. But when they got there, the doctors were like, oh, but no, you missed this, and we need to source this out for, we can't just do a half job and leave you. But that additional treatment, that additional procedure meant $10,000 more, 10,000 US dollars more, literally from 17 to 27,000. That's how that bill just skyrocketed. And they didn't have that 10,000 then. So then they were calling us, we were communicating with them. And what the hospital agreed to do was for us as MedTours Africa to guarantee that we would follow up and make sure that that payment would be remitted. And we signed on with them. So we took on that burden on paper, because it's difficult to chase up after an individual. If you're a hospital in India, for you to then chase up for on an individual back in them for the $10,000 payment, it would be difficult, and they wouldn't have gone ahead with that treatment if we hadn't, as MedTours Africa, said, we will pay you. That was it. So it was lots of conversations with the family back home, because I also didn't want to take on a responsibility of a $10,000 bill with the hospital, and I don't want to ruin a relationship I've already created with my hospital partners. Also, it was back and forth, but you know what, it's in 2 days, 2-3 days, we managed to get the paperwork sorted, and that person was treated. I tell you, are we still good? I think we are.
Yes, we are.
Okay. And then, so now, are there any questions? Should I go on? No questions.
Maybe you can go on, and then we will take the questions and comments once you're done.
Okay, that's fine. So now I'll go in. So that's the story of really how I started MedTours Africa. And then the journey has been one of growth. The first year that we launched, we only facilitated for one patient, and that's the one patient who passed on. And then the second year, 2016, we then, and there was a lot of marketing. We then approached, and we had started from day one, even at the launch event, we had invited medical aid companies to come through, because we knew they were also interested in that they could still offer their members quality medical treatment, but manage on the member funds. So we thought these people should be able to give us people. I mean, next week, I'm sure we'll be getting patients That's what we thought. But that was a year later. After a year of operations, that's when the medical aids actually started giving us patients. And I guess they were testing us to see if we're not a fly, is it fly by the night? I don't know that expression, an overnight kind of thing that we'll just start and leave. And I think if there are any out there listening in, I think it's a bit unfair to expect a startup to prove that they can exist for long when you don't give them the business to enable them to exist for long. So if there are any corporate people out there listening, give those startups some business. I think what I would recommend is give us business, but in small amounts maybe initially, but don't hold off completely just because you want to see a track record. Who is there to give us a track record if you don't give us the business? Anyway, now I'm friends with the medical aid partners. I'm actually an affiliate member with the association, which happened 3 years afterwards, after starting. But the second year, 2016, looked good, and this was the second half of 2016. So 2015 and the first half of 2016, we were just still floating around, coasting along, marketing. Was I wrong in that there was need? Is there? But I remember I went through this and I needed this. My uncle could have done with our service. How do I make my service known? And we're trying to do things. And then we got the first aid companies in, and they started giving us business. 2017, we were facilitating for an average of 6 to 7 patients a month, which was really good. Into 2018 as well. Our target has always been 20. So we haven't reached the target because we would want to get to 20 patients a month. 2018 was also good. All people are now calling me up for speaking gigs. I am now the known authority for medical tourism in Zimbabwe. Gosh, and I managed to go on to, different platforms, South Africa, Croatia, India, and giving perspectives from what a patient from Southern Africa expects when they travel. So it was really good. So it's been growth. It's been growth, and then came 2020. Medical tourism requires someone to travel from their home country to a destination country. So when you shut down borders and when you seize flights, that doesn't happen. So from March, I remember our last patient before COVID traveled in February 2020. And then they came back. It was just a week. Was it a 10-day stay in India? And then when they came back, and we had others lined up for the rest of the year, but they couldn't travel. It was dead, quiet, closed doors, closed borders, closed hospitals for a good 9 months. A good 9-month stretch with no business, the main source of income. We also have other income streams, like when someone travels, then we can organize for them to get their prescription drugs and stuff. So, but it's not as a profit, there's just a small fee. It was really rethinking and refocusing on how to do what to do, because the need is still there. But so it's another conversation, I guess, on how to pivot and iterate and what we've done in the business. So it's not, I'll digress if I go much into that. So let me rush into the lessons learned. I've got about 4 lessons which I listed here. The first one is not, and this, the lessons I think someone can learn, and it's because it's lessons I've learned. So I learned that not everyone will like your concept, right? When I started, I remember I organized a meeting with the Zimbabwe Medical Association, which is the association for doctors. And the partner hospital, when we launched, this was actually one of the first meetings we had after launch. And I went with the partners from the Indian hospital to have a meeting with the Secretary General. And what he said to me was, we're not friends, but what he said to me then was, we don't like you, I quote you verbatim, we don't like you because you're taking food off our table. And he said, so I will not be speaking to you in this meeting. And he physically turned to the side and said, but I can talk to you because we're in the same industry and you understand what I'm talking about. You're a professional. And So the rest of that meeting, he blanked me. This is the meeting I have organized. But now he's actually one of the trustees in my trust. I knew that I didn't start the business to take food off someone's table. I started the business because my aunt had passed away, because there was a service which was lacking locally. So that was one of the lessons, like persist. There will be naysayers out there. And I also remember there's a point, I think a year and a half into the business, where the Medical and Dental Practitioners Association of Zimbabwe, MDPCC, it's the council, it's not an association. So the authoritative, they're the ones who license practitioners. They sent out a memo to all their members, and this is everyone in the country who's registered with them, about how bad medical tourism is. And what they did was mention MedTours Africa in the subject, but then they didn't mention my company in the email body, but it was a bad one. And I actually tried to sue them, but my legal counsel said, we can't, because they haven't explicitly said don't use MedTours Africa. They had worded that nasty circular to their members in such a way as to just count my services, as irrelevant and as dangerous, which is not what it is. So there will be naysayers. That's number one, which I learned. But if you refer back to the why you started a business, then that will give you the strength to carry on. You can cry. I remember I cried. It was really nasty. I didn't think it was necessary. And I had actually engaged them on a one-on-one. I'd gone and talked to the director. So for her to then, anyway, when you refer back to your why, you will understand, and it will give you the strength to go on. My lesson, the second lesson is, don't be afraid to be vulnerable, to put yourself out there, because you might not be the expert in the industry where you're starting the business. So you're going to be asking people, what does cardiac mean? And some will laugh at you, but some will actually tell you. When you're selling a product, and Una was talking about it, when you're selling, there is always that possibility of rejection. You're making yourself vulnerable and you're opening yourself up to rejection, and it's never easy. You don't get used to it. I think you find coping mechanisms and you bounce back up, and maybe your bounce back time increases and you bounce back faster, but the rejection always stings. So don't be afraid to be vulnerable. I was just listening, I think 3 times now, to Brene Brown, and she has a whole TEDx talk on vulnerability, and she says the most courageous people are the ones who are willing to be vulnerable, because you can't separate courage and vulnerability. The third lesson is, and I talked about it earlier actually, no matter what extent of planning you could do, something unexpected, unplanned for will happen. Look at COVID. Look at the naysayers. Look at how long it will take to actually convince that key client to use you. It might not be what you projected. So the unexpected is going to happen. The solution, go back to your why. COVID will happen. Then go back to, why did I start this? Okay, it's to enable healthcare access for all. So, all right, now that the borders are closed, what other things can I do to still enable healthcare access for all? When I go back to my why, it helps me to then think of other ways to get to that solution, because one road might be shut right now, but there are always ways around it. Dig through, dig in, dig on top. I don't know, whatever way. And I think that's one of my strengths. I look at a problem, I'm thinking, okay, this isn't working, then what else? What can we do? So the unexpected will happen. Just refer back to your why and keep going, just persist. And then my last lesson is when the why is good enough, when your service is needed, and sometimes you don't see success as yourself, the people around you will acknowledge it. they will see it and you will get good feedback. And I have been fortunate enough to get awarded for my efforts, and I am, I look at them sometimes, I'm like, oh, okay. The first award, because in 2015, when I launched the company, I got an award from the ZNCC, the Zimbabwe National, not ZNCC, from Megafest Awards. They awarded me for the most dynamic startup. It's like, okay, I've been in business for 5 years. I've been in business for 5 years with CJV Medical Supplies. No one had ever given me anything or even said you exist. The second year, 2016, I had 2 awards, African Women Awards, so that was a continental one. And I think that's when ZNCC awarded me. I'm like, okay, I'm doing something right. Someone is noticing me. And in 2017, another 3 awards. So each year from 2015, I have been recognized and awarded by national bodies, regional bodies, international bodies. I've won awards in India for, I'm named as one of the top 100 most influential people in healthcare. And that just says to me, sometimes I don't see how much I've impacted people, but they see it and they acknowledge it and it's useful and it keeps me going. And I think the best accolade has been from patients. I saw the applause, thank you. I see the applause. The best accolade has been, there's a lady, she had a little child who needed to go for treatment. And then when she came back, she said, Cheu, you saved my daughter's life. I was like, what? Okay, thank you. And when things are down and when the profits are not coming in and when COVID has hit and things don't seem to be moving, it's those accolades, those acknowledgements that keep me going, that make me think I'm not a quitter and I'm not going to give up. I'm just going to have to find another solution to address the why, which I started the business. So yes, that is it. I think I have 15 minutes for question and answer and comment and feedback and advice, whatever comes to me.
Definitely. We've just got about 12 minutes to wrap it up. But what an amazing speech. And I invite everyone to, again, just unmute, show your faces so that we can celebrate this powerful woman that we've got on the stage here today. Thank you so much for that. That was amazing. Wow. I completely love your story right from the beginning until the end. And I think your testimony really to the saying where success is born sometimes from the deepest hurts that we've had in our lives. So if there's challenges that you're going through in your life and you don't know why they're happening, that is your why. Your why was you had to give birth to a company that's going to save so many other lives. And I completely love your story. Thank you for sharing it, your resilience through your business. I think, the comment section is also blowing up. So I'd just like to read a few of them so that we are able to get some questions. So Chad was just, I think, commenting on your question there about the stats of entrepreneurs. In some sectors, 60% of businesses fail within 12 months of starting. 80% would fail in under, I think, 5 years. Depends which industry or location you're in. In tech, for an example, 70% of startups fail within 2 years after raising capital. So you see, so in the first couple of years, there's quite a lot of failure. The fact that you've passed the 5-year mark means that you're doing something right. And then Lucisa saying your scope of work covers a lot of ground. It's a full package. Awesome. It's a nice encouragement there. Cheu is just on another level. Everything she says comes from experience, and I really value that. And that's coming from Uno. Entrepreneurial goals, profound. I think it's more of how the entrepreneur presents themselves to potential business partners. And then it becomes an investment into the person. I don't know if you can relate to that, but definitely, Lucy said that's true. And then Mr. Maruta is saying, what is the biggest challenge that you've come across, and how did you manage to overcome it?
Okay, so the biggest challenge I've come across is actually getting acceptance into the medical field. Not as a medical person, but as a person who is giving out a necessary service. Like I talked about, that first meeting with Zimmer was really horrible. And then the letter the MDPCZ then sent out to their members, that was also very horrible. So it's that challenge. And if you don't have doctors buy-in and your medical tourism, then it's really difficult because a patient listens to their doctor. So the doctor is going to tell you X, Y, Z, and as a patient, you're most likely going to listen to them. So if there was a body which is licensing the doctors, telling them not to use MedTours Africa, then that would have been a big thing, but a big hindrance for me. How I've managed to deal with it was to persist in showing them why. That wasn't my last meeting with Zimmer. I then went again to them, talking to them about how they would want me to conduct business. So my conversation, I think the next conversation I had with them was, what you understand, we understand. I have an aunt, she died because of this, and she died because the service is not available. What would make my service okay with you guys? Because I am that bridge between Zim and India. What would make sense so that you actually acknowledge that I exist? And it was a good conversation in that he said, what we worry about is the post-care. What happens when the patient comes back and they need post-care treatment? Patients are then coming to us. We don't have a background of what went on in whatever surgery, and then we're expected to assist. And those doctors who are there who have used up the money are not available. So I then said, okay, that's something we can work on. Let's work on linking you up with the operating doctor, the home doctor. We have direct, WhatsApp is very good. We can give you a WhatsApp number of the operating doctors. You can actually have a pre-procedure call and then a post-procedure when the patient comes back. So linking those profession to profession. And I said to them, so you can even talk over my head. I understand, that I don't have any medical background and you think I can't understand. But why don't you talk doctor to doctor? Because you're most likely going to be able to understand yourself. So that's how we overcame it. And we're actually now sponsoring some of the events they do, some of the CME, which is continuous education programs for the local doctors. We have visiting specialists online who come through and also talk about, cases. And then there's that exchange of expertise and experiences from both ends. And that's assisted. So sometimes we actually get referrals from doctors themselves. And that's how we managed to overcome that particular challenge.
Wow. Amazing. Wow. I hope Mr. Maruta, Cheu was able to answer that, but that was thorough. And I love the way you really have mastered partnership because your business wouldn't exist without it. So it means you're good. You're good with stakeholder relations, and those skills have really done something for your business. Google is saying, kindly please elaborate more on how you managed COVID-19, the 9 months shutdown. What was the recovery plan for you?
Okay, so we had to shut down offices, and then because we are at number, I'll just mark it as well, number 94 Central Avenue, in Harare. So, and we are renting it, from the property owners. We had to shut down, and luckily we got some tenants who were still in business and were paying. So we managed to raise at least about 3/4 of what was due in rent through subletting. And then the rest of it, it was coming out of my personal savings, and then the other business, because CJV Medical Supplies did quite well during COVID from the medical supplies. So it was now also loaning MedTours Africa some money, had to retrench a couple of people, and then the salaries really slashed. We had to go down. When the flight started moving, what we managed to do was to actually facilitate for some patients to go to Egypt. So we then looked at Egypt as a destination because they didn't close their borders, unlike India. So we had a couple of people go to Egypt, and the opportunity that it presented, which is something I had thought of when I was starting, is to really go strong on the online presence, because the individual who actually went to Egypt was a Rwandese. So we managed to facilitate for someone in Rwanda to travel to Egypt for a kidney transplant. And then, so those kinds of things were good. So I don't think we have it just yet we haven't come out of the impact, because we're still struggling to make a profit. So we haven't come out of that phase yet. It's just a lot of discussion. And I think what I also realized was the need for an effective board of directors to guide, and to guide especially the strategic aspect of how the business should go. So I've been trying to get an effective board. No disrespect to the current board, are there any board members in? But so getting a very involved board, so that we can map out the years going forward. It's in our horizons. We definitely want to start promoting inbound medical tourism, but that means a lot of infrastructure and technology inbound before we can start offering some services. So it's a lot of ideas going on and being discussed, but definitely cutting down on the expenses, I guess, is one way to summarize how we've coped.
Sure. Wow, there's a wealth of knowledge, and I can see that the questions are just continuing. And so I'll ask, while we're sort of transitioning into the next speaker, that you do actually take the time to answer some of the questions that the guys are really having, because I think we're enjoying your spirit and your energy and just the love of the work that you do, and that it's spilling out, I think, more and more. So we're so excited. And I think Uno would love to actually weigh in a little bit there.
All right. I just want to say thank you very much to a very good friend of mine, Cheu, for coming through and agreeing to come and speak to us today. When you listen to Cheu's story, you're not getting any extras. She's just telling you like it is, how she experienced it. And what a way to learn from a practical, realistic entrepreneur. And from the very first conversation we had up to now, where we have engaged a lot more, I can tell you that Cheu is one of those exemplary entrepreneurs that you want as your personal business coach. That's not even, she actually is a great coach. And when she coaches out of experience, out of understanding, because of the empathy that she has, because of the experiences that she's gotten. So thank you so much, Cheu, for coming through and presenting your experiences to us. We really, really value that. We hope our relationship with you and MedTours Africa will definitely continue. Thank you very much.